Um, Hello, everybody. Welcome. So, if you have not joined us before, I'll introduce myself. I am Alec Harrison. I am a Microsoft MVP in AI and Azure. I run a few different user groups. So, I'm located in Omaha, Nebraska. I started this user group or revived it with Derek Sharp, who was a solution architect. Now he's a technical product person at Microsoft. And what we wanted to do is we saw during COVID that the Iowa user group kind of spun down. We didn't have anybody really running it. So we wanted to kick off virtual events. And then we saw other regions kind of following the similar path of maybe an organizer moved on, maybe they moved, maybe they got tired of scheduling. The goal for us was to help continue run groups for areas so people could have it and then try to find people in those regions if they wanted to do in-person stuff. It looks like you're still sharing your screen. Uh,
Yes.
okay, cool. Just making sure. So if you want to ever have a group event in person, we try to do 2 events a year in each of the locations. Right now, we are helping run Kansas City, Des Moines, Omaha, and also Chicago. So if this is your first time, welcome. We try to do 1 event a month. Always happy to find community speakers. So if there's anything you want to hear about or talk about, feel free to shoot me a message on Meetup, LinkedIn, however you want to get a hold of me of anything that you want to learn more about, or if you'd like to give a presentation.
Hey, Alec, don't forget the Denver group too.
Oh yeah, sorry. Sorry. I think Tom's even on this call. We also work with Tom to help with the Denver group as well. So um, a lot of our stuff we try to be virtual friendly as well. So even if we are in person, you're more than welcome to forward these invites to anybody else. We definitely don't want to be exclusive of anybody. So we try to be as open and transparent and help out as many people as possible. So uh, looks like if you're not, I can see the screen. You might need to reload Teams. Uh,
Me stop sharing and start again.
yeah, I can see your stuff, but
Uh,
see if you reload it now that everybody's in.
Yeah, usually if you can't see it, if people can't see the screen, everybody else can. You have to just jump out and jump back in with Teams.
yep. So let me know if you guys can see now.
Yep.
Yep, I can see it.
Okay, awesome. So should we get started?
Yeah, and I'll hand it off to our speaker today. We'll be talking about automated deployments for Power BI projects.
Hi, everybody. This is my first presentation in this group of audience, and essentially today I'm going to talk about automated deployment using PBIP. Now, PBIP stands for Power BI projects. It's a feature which is still in preview. This was rolled out sometime last year by Microsoft. It's still not generally available version, but it's in preview mode. Developers can enable this feature, and I'll show you how in a minute. And essentially, we're going to talk about the benefits, and we're also going to I'm going to take you through the way we are doing currently the Power BI projects inside large organizations and what's in store for the future. So I am Mehul Bhuva. I'm a data architect, work with QCI, and I have a tech blog, sharepointfix.com. And I recently got my Azure Data Engineer Associate certificate. So that's a little bit background about me. Let's get started on the topic for today. So just wanted to share, let's see if I can just do a file. Yep. So let's look at some of the pain areas for the current Power BI developers. One of the pain areas that I feel is that we have something known as a PBIX file, which is like one large monolithic file, which is a binary format file. And you just got to write that, all your visuals and all your logic in that one big file. And there is no version control, source control in the workspaces that it get published to. You'll have to write something custom for that to create a version control and source control for that. There is no merge process like we do with our other code bases, C# code bases like Azure functions or ADF pipelines, things like that. So that's a big pain area, and that's why Microsoft came up with PBIP. There's
one.
sorry.
Your slide is showing the next slide. Are you able to go to the full screen view mode?
Sure. 1 second.
It's probably small on some people's screens.
Right. Just a second. Let me see if I can see. Why is it doing that? Hide the presenter. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me try that again. Show present in Teams. So yeah, I don't know for whatever reasons. Is this okay? Is this screen okay?
Yeah, I think that is a little bit bigger. Is anybody else having issue seeing it? Or if you
I
can
can.
close the ribbon towards the top right of your top nav, I think that'd make it even better.
Oh, okay. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, you go.
I think
It's
that's
good.
better.
Okay. Sorry for whatever reasons my PowerPoint is not allowing me to present it, but I'll just go with this for now. Right. So the PBIX files are just standard files. I'll show you an example here real quick. So this is an example of a PBIX file, right? This is one Power BI report, and this is a PBIX file. And if you open this PBIX file in a Notepad++, all you see is a garbled text here, right here. And this is not very good. So essentially, this prevents you from collaborating with other developers, and this prevents you from doing any kind of automated deployment. So those are some of the challenges we have, right? As we go through the slide, that you publish these PBX files to a Power BI workspace, and that workspace is also not version controlled, source controlled. If you lose if someone deletes the PBIX file or the report file from the workspace, you tend to lose it because there's no version control associated. And then it's a binary format. So, and there is also manual deployment. So right now, what some teams in our company do is basically they create the PBIX files and then they move it across the dev, test, prod workspaces manually. There is an automated deployment pipeline, which I'll cover next year, that we use currently for the PBIX files that is out of the box on the Fabric workspace, where you could do the dev to test to prod along with the deployment rules, which will basically change your connections pointing from dev to test to prod. But this is also a manual process where you'll have to do manual comparisons. This is the compare button, the orange part of it, where you compare the files or the semantic models that you have from one workspace to the other, and then select the files and deploy them manually. But I have seen honestly a lot of issues with this too. Certain reports with custom visualizations fail during deployments, and that's been a big pain area. Uh, so there have been challenges with this too. So this is the current approach, right? Now, what's the new approach that Microsoft recommends, which is the PBIP? Now, it's a new way to manage and deploy Power BI content. As I said, all good things that we have with source control, with source code, right? With Git, version control, source control, automated deployments, merge, PR, everything. It encapsulates, the bigger part of it is it breaks down your code or your reports into several different components, which I'll go through in a minute. Which is, for example, if you're writing a semantic model, it will break your semantic model into TMDL files and PBISM files. And you can extrapolate and see the kind of tables and relationships you have in your Power BI reports, and essentially have collaborate with other developers and work on a PR review process. Because right now there is no PR review process for Power BI deployments or Power BI projects. Someone has to manually go and review it. There is no source control. There's no source code behind it. This PBIP gives you source code behind the actual report. The source code is mostly JSON, which is visually, the developers can look at the code and figure out what it's doing. And there are examples in the slide on how the PBIP and the TMDL formats look like. I'll also convert a Power BI PBIX file into a PBIP and show it to the larger group here. So essentially, with PBIP, you can have a single source of truth, simplify the deployment process and enhance collaboration, integrate it with the CI/CD pipelines. Going on to the next one, I mean, these are all basic, again, the same thing, version control, collaboration. Um, Here, it's more about why we use the benefits, what are the benefits of automated deployment? We have consistency, efficiency, reliability, and scalability. because you could deploy through different environments, just like a developer can create a feature branch and work on his report and then create a PR to merge it to the master branch. Essentially, that gives an opportunity for other developers to review and then push it all the way to the master branch, and then eventually through the fabric APIs to different workspaces like dev, test, and prod. Right. So these are some of the elements that you'll have to, or steps you need to take to create a PBIP. I'll just go through it in a minute while showing you exactly what we need to do. So we need to have a Power BI desktop, probably the latest version, and then enable the PBIP feature in the desktop settings, and then create a PBIP and add your Power BI reports and data sets to the project. So uh, let me show you something real quick here. So this is a sample report. It's not even a complete report. So the way you would basically go and enable this feature right now, as I said, it's in the preview mode. So as preview features. So if you go here on your options in your file settings, you will see something known as a PBIP save option, and you'll have to check these boxes here, TMDL format. Um, in the past, it used to be a different format, the BIM format, where when you create a semantic model, it would basically convert your semantic model into a BIM format, which you could use SSIS to open it. But they have come up with something more, which is a better option, which is a TMDL format, which is a JSON format. And you could basically see what the elements are. And then also the reports in the PBIR format. So this is all we need to do to basically enable the PBIP preview feature. And let's convert this to a PBIP project. Basically, the way you would do it here, basically just select the PBIP, and that's it. Um, and I can probably save it to location here. And basically what you see here is when it gets saved, still working on it. So you'll see that it basically created a Power BI desktop file, which is a PBIP file, and these 3 extra folders here, which is a semantic model. Since this report has both semantic model and a report visual, it created these extra visuals for extra code files for us. So see, the semantic model has a PBI SM format, and I'll go through the definition. And the report has probably a PBIR format. So let's see where that is. So if I go to the PBISM format, these are just the minimal settings here in the PBISM. But if I go to the definition and show you all the tables that are, see the database TMDL as well, it gives the information on the database itself and the model associated with it. Basically, the ref table is Blinkit grocery and things like that. What it also gives, which I like the most, is the TMDL for the tables associated. Right, like for example, and the measures that are a part of this table. So it's associated to a Blinkit grocery data table, and then these are some of the measures that I've created. Average sales, number of items. So it gives you a visual representation, and then also the columns in that table. So this is a new thing that developers would love going forward, working on the PBIP projects, um, and that's the hope, that this would basically also create a lot of automation. So some column metrics here. I'll go through the slides again to show you more features here on the slides in the PowerPoint. So I mean, this is a good resource if you want to go through this resource. That this is a great resource. To show you real quick. It gives you complete picture of what PBIP is. So if you go to this resource here, the Microsoft resource, it gives you all the um, snapshots and step-by-step guide on what to do, how to get started, things like that, right? See, they deploy to the Fabric workspace. It also goes through all the semantic model folder that I was just going through, essentially, and show you the differences, which I have captured in my slides here. Just go through it. This is how it looks like, right? I just went through some of the code behind for that. And essentially it creates a project structure for you with the PBIP and a PBIR and PBISM, things like that. The semantic model, this is more interesting because zoom in a little bit. So basically, if you see, it is showing you easily readable set of tables here, and easily readable, understandable Power Query and DAX expressions right here. You see, and it gives you a good idea of what's inside the report without actually opening Power BI desktop. Right. Then, if you're opening this up in a Git repo, basically it gives you a good definition of how things look like. So if I open this up, a second here, folder. Yeah, so it gives me a good representation of everything right here, and I can see thing. And then, as I said, developers can create a feature branch and work on their individual reports and then merge it. So pretty basic, simple, um, and efficient way to basically do Power BI reports. Any questions so far? I'll keep going. So we just saw that you could use Git for version control. You can initialize a Git repo, commit your changes to the repo repository, and then collaborate with other team members, create pull requests, and merge to the master branch. Um, this is what a typical Git integration would look like on the Fabric, essentially. So the way it works is basically you have a central repo, either in ADO or Git, and then your developers would create feature branches and then sync it up all the way to the master branch. And essentially you would have a pipeline, just like a CI/CD pipeline, right? An ADO pipeline, where you'll have to use Fabric APIs to first build the data set and build the data set rules. So there is also a sample PBIP implementation. If you are interested, I can show you this basically. So what I like about this is you could basically run data set rules during your build process. So if you see the right hand side here, I have a sample I have a sample pipeline that I created for one of my projects in the past. Um, and as I said, this is still in preview, so we have some Fabric API defects that we are fighting with Microsoft on. But for the most part, it works fine. And there are some data set rules that you could run, which will basically, it's like a build checker. If you have certain rules that you're violating, your developers are violating certain rules, you could catch them in advance and the build would fail. And then you would ask them to correct those. And essentially, they would check it back in and create a new PR for you to review. So those kind of things can be enforced at the build level, which are not possible currently. And then you also have reporting rules that when on the data set side you build. So this is a semantic model. The build data set stands for semantic model rules. And the build reports would be the PBIR reports or the reporting rules engine. So these two are, if you look at one of the sample implementations, they are pretty much well laid out here by Microsoft. Right. So there are Fabric. Yes, yeah. Let me show you that real quick here. Sample ADO pipelines. Yeah. So there's continuous integration deployment. These are YAML files where they have some rules in place. Basically, where they would go through and there is a PBI inspector that goes through your reports and highlights things that you have violated in terms of those. And you could basically downgrade or upgrade the severity of those rules by bringing those rules files into your YAML or your ADO pipelines, right? So this is a great resource to look at. We've been doing a lot of research on this and basically taking bits and pieces from these sample projects from Microsoft Fabric, and these are pretty new. So they've been working on it for a while, but they're still updating these Git repositories. So the best practices that we've seen are use meaningful commit messages, regularly update your PBIP project with latest changes, test deployments in the staging environment before production, and then monitor the deployed reports. Right. So that's the best practices that we follow using the PBIP projects. Um, Again, the good part about it is that you don't need a premium license to do all these things. Right now, if you want to set up a deployment pipeline, out of the box deployment pipeline, you would need a premium license or a Fabric capacity license for your workspace. But for enabling the PBIP, you don't need, you just can use a pro license or a basic license and basically cut down the cost that way. You don't need for Fabric APIs to publish to your workspaces, they don't need a premium license. So that's one big advantage. Uh, so the future of Power BI deployments, in fact, if I want to go through, this is more from a futuristic perspective, is basically more of a SaaS model where you would have a one lake strategy where everything is in one Delta Lake, and you have your integrations, engineering, warehousing, data science, and the business intelligence all integrated into that one SaaS foundation. So your business users, your technical developers, your Power developers who are reporting, writing reports, can all be on the same platform that way. So this is a good diagram from Microsoft that I wanted to present here. This is probably going to be, and this is more on the Fabric side, right? Not on the PBIP, but a whole overall higher picture of how the Fabric is taking shape and how it is presenting it as a SaaS. Like the whole package is being marketed as a SaaS foundation. So let me go through that resource real quick here, which I want to show you something here. Essentially, all the things that I've covered are present here. I mean, these are my presentation is technically a part of this resource that Microsoft has. You can go through it and look at the nitty-gritties of this, essentially, and that way, basically, you can find out how to convert your existing PBIX files into PBIP projects. The Git integration part is also mentioned here, and how to initialize the repository and things like that. Right? The DevOps Get integration part is here too. So I would like you guys to probably go and check this out if you're interested to build some things similar to your for your project needs here. And there are several versions of like models of how you could implement it in your team. There's no one good model. Depends on what you want, kind of, for your team setup. Um, these are like hands-on guide on doing certain things, like building a starter pipeline, for example, right? So this is a good place to start. We started off with this, right? And then we build on to our customizations this way. So this is what we have here, actually. But I think I'm pretty much done with my presentation here. If we have questions, I can take up those questions here. Yeah, I mean, to conclude that, I think this is going to be the norm going forward, that you leverage PBIP instead of PBIX and convert the existing PBIX files into PBIP, start that process soon enough so that once it becomes generally available, you are in a good spot there. That's what we've been doing with our team. And then by following the best practices, basically you are streamlining your development work that way. So that's it from my side. And I think I'm done with the presentation. Unless you have any specific questions for me, I can answer them.
Does anybody have a question? You can come off mute or feel free to put in the chat. So what's kind of been your biggest takeaway working in Power BI space? Like, if I'm trying to get started, or if I'm trying to like get a rein on, maybe I have a ton of reports, like it's kind of a good place to start.
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. So the first place to start would be to choose a model. So like find out if you want to use the SaaS approach or you want to use a more custom approach, right? Like depends on if you uh, if you are a Power BI developer, let's say, depends on what you like, from whose point of view you're asking the question. Let's say you are a Power BI developer and you want to use your existing data sets in your company. You would need to get those data sets or query those data sets either by doing a live query or doing an import. What we have seen is challenges with an import process is that if you have a table with hundreds of millions of records, the import is going to definitely be a big challenge. So for those large tables, you would use a live query, and you would query it on demand and not import the data for obvious reasons, because your Power BI engine would not function very well with that kind of a scenario. And if you are new to Power BI, you want to get started. So that's the first thing you'll have to decide whether you want to import or you want to do a live query, right? Then if you have an existing data lake setup, like an Azure Gen Data Lake 2 storage, how are you going to get that data from a Parquet file or Avro files or CSV files, JSON files into um, a relational database warehouse like an Azure Synapse or your own custom SQL database model that you are using for data warehousing? Some people I've seen them, some companies just do an ad hoc that, hey, we have this OLTP transaction processing database and just query the database real time and get your reports out from there, which is a bad model because it could impact performance and things like that. So what most companies do is they have a warehouse where they ship all the data into that warehouse. So first to a data lake, and then the warehouse would basically get data from the data lake, incremental loads from the Delta Lake, and basically query that data warehouse from the Power BI. So we create semantic models for that, so that the Power BI developers can leverage those semantic models and use that for their reporting needs. That ways, if other teams want to query, they don't create their own semantic models, but use an existing semantic model that has good data integrity, right? Um, you could have a semantic model with measures and things like that, pre-built aggregations for the other teams to use up, right? So that's one strategy. I mean, I'm not saying that's the only one, but I've seen that when there is Power BI usage, it's mostly decentralized, and every team is using it in a different way. So the whole setup that I'm showing you on screen prevents that from happening. That you have one lake, where all your data gets aggregated, and then you have your pipelines for Synapse or ADF that bring in data to your specific tables in your data warehouse, Synapse data warehouse, and you can apply transformations, things like that. And you can apply some intelligence like machine learning models and for weather, and there are so many other options available. Like for one of the clients, we are doing some weather analysis. We are applying data. We're telling the farmers on how, what's the best season to grow crops and things like that, from by getting and studying the existing data and applying some machine learning models. And then they use Power BI to get that semantic model data set that we have prepared for them, and show them as visuals. So
Cool.
I think, yeah, but that was a good question.
I've definitely seen what you're talking about, of everybody just kind of ad hocs their own reports, and then
Yeah.
as people come and go, they get passed around, and now everybody has their own flavor of the same report, and that might not be
Right.
the most performant or efficient. And yeah, I've definitely seen that a time or two.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Does anybody have a question? If not, I can go ahead and stop the recording.
Yeah, I can stop presenting.
Would this be a bad approach for people who are great at analysis but are not interested in coding? Is there any additional literature coming out on this?
Would this be a bad approach for people who are great at analysis but not interested in coding? So for the most part, I have seen that the coding part of this is on the DevOps side, right? You still can leverage the Power BI desktop for all your report generation through the visualizations. But what this gives you is extra flexibility of collaboration, right? Basically, you don't necessarily need to code the reports in. You can use the Power BI desktop still, um, and you don't. So, for example, if the project that I converted to show you, maybe I can share it again. Share my screen. If you guys can see it. So the
Yep.
sales data project that I converted. Just close it down, open it up again. So once it's converted to a PBIP format, it can still be, you can still open that up in a Power BI desktop and work on the visualizations, and you don't have to necessarily code it. But the reason why, like similar to an ADF pipeline, if you guys have worked on the Azure Data Factory, you can do all your pipeline work on the UI, on the ADF UI by drag and drop and activities. But when you are actually doing, when we are rolling it out in dev, test, and prod, you have a way to do where developers or team members can go and review your changes through that. So the same PBIP project can be opened in the Power BI desktop, if that answers your question. But I don't, yeah, there is literature going to come out. There is this, so the Microsoft page, the project's overview page that I shared, this keeps getting updated. So this is a good starting point for everyone to look at. I'm just going to share it on the chat here. So this literature will keep updating. There will be new guidance. As I said, this is a preview feature, and essentially you could definitely start this early on in your development lifecycle versus waiting for it to be generally available. Yeah. Does this answer your question, Rob? Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Sounds good.
I'm going to stop the recording. If there's anybody